So, first of all, what got you interested in meditation and mindfulness? How did it all begin?
Well, it's an interesting story, right? Because I was, generally speaking, kind of against all of that kind of thing. Back in my pre-meditation days, I was a complete atheist, big fan of, Richard Dawkins books and all that. And I just thought, if it's not scientifically proven, then, just don't even bother with it. However, for quite a long time, I had suffered with pretty serious insomnia.
Hmm.
And in order to deal with that, I used to drink a lot. So I would drink anywhere between, a couple of beers and like a bottle of red wine a night sometimes, um, just to get a good night's sleep, right? Well, and then it becomes a habit, of course, and then you need
Yeah.
it just to relax and everything. So anyway, I did realize that was taking me into a bit of a wrong direction, and I couldn't help but think how much better my life would be if I could sleep better. So I tried various things. I tried, how to get to sleep CDs. I tried some pretty strong sleeping tablets, which worked great, but they come with their own kind of hangover, unfortunately,
Yeah.
and various other things. So as meditation started to become bigger in the public consciousness over the last 10 years or so, um, I did start to read more and more about how it was proven to help in various areas, and this is one of them. So I did a course called Mindfulness Based Stress Reduction, and that was picked specifically because it was a very scientific, non-secular, no religion, no spirituality, all of that, usually used to treat people with chronic problems, chronic illnesses, help them deal with it mentally through meditation. So I tried that and I actually got a lot out of it. I came away thinking it was really, really good. And it just didn't quite hit the spot though in terms of the sleeping problem. I still had this sleeping problem and I was still drinking and stuff. So I knew there was something there, but it just wasn't. I just knew I had to go deeper or I had to find some other kind of meditation. So I signed up for another meditation course nearby where I lived. Didn't really know much about it, but on the website it told me it was all very scientific and all the rest of it. So the next thing, I'm in a room and they're doing the woman is singing in Sanskrit and she's doing like a little yagya fire sacrifice puja. And the next minute, me and all these other people are bowing down to a picture of an Indian guru. And I'm thinking, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
And I make eye contact with this girl over the way, and we both look at each other and we both want to laugh because we just don't know what's going on. How have we ended up in this position? Anyway, after that short thing, we all sit down and we are the course starts. And apart from that, it was all fairly normal, good advice, techniques, gave us a Sanskrit mantra, which we were told was a meaningless sound that we repeat in our minds, and shown how to use it. And over the next 4 days, we were taught how to do a style of meditation, which I now know is called Vedic meditation, which is, if anybody's ever done transcendental meditation, same thing, different brand name. Okay. So what happened was after 4 days, 4 days of doing a 2 hour session with the teacher, so not a residential course or anything, just around the corner from where I lived. After 4 days of 8 hours of instruction, I was sleeping perfectly. It
Mm.
completely changed the whole thing. I was, not only was I going to bed at like 10 o'clock and falling asleep for the first time since I could remember, because my sleep problems go right back to my early years, being 14, 15, 16, 17. I never wanted to go to bed. So suddenly this change happened. And so I knew there was something there. Now, on this course, on the last day, they give you a very big spiritual explanation of the Himalayas of the yogis, and this is what they believe, and you're dipping into all this consciousness. And I just thought, this is all nonsense,
Yeah.
but it works. So I'm just going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And so I did. I really committed to it and just kept doing it every day, twice a day, 20 minutes. Do it, do it, do it, do it. And not only did my sleeping problems improve, but everything in my life just seemed to get better and better. And so, and to be more specific about that, I just mean that I became less and less wrapped up in the mental drama that typically comes with everyday life. So back then I was running my own online business with a group of other guys, and my mood was very, very up and down based on how it was going, based on whether we were making money and not making money. And this business is in the trading niche. So trading profits are generally up and down like the weather.
Yeah.
So it was very stressful, or at least it was in my mind. But suddenly it was just not bothering me anymore. Just things just weren't bothering me. And so I started to have this thought, like, this other business I've been in it a long time, and I was looking for other things. And I started to think, God, I'd love to teach people this. I'd love to teach people, but I still don't think it needs all that spiritual stuff that I got. Maybe if I taught it, I would teach it without all of that. And so I threw myself into it, really. I thought, well, if I'm going to teach it, I need to go all the way. So I started then doing retreats and doing more advanced courses and doing much, much longer periods of meditation. And then I had some experiences which made me think, oh, I was wrong about all that spiritual stuff.
Okay. How do you mean?
So it's hard to explain these kinds of things, because usually they are, a poet could do a better job. You don't usually have the words for it. But essentially, I started to see things in the way that is typically explained in the yogic philosophies. So things just made more sense. Like, I became very aware of my own ego when my own ego was acting out, or if I was in a situation and I was acting a certain way, it just became quite obvious that certain primal drives had been triggered. And there was also me, as Eckhart Tolle and those people would like to point out, there is also a watcher. There's a witness to the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so rather than being constantly wrapped up in the drama of life, you still are involved in it, but there's also another side of you which is awakened, which is the witnessing side. And if you can, although to me it feels like a complete accident, once that was triggered or awoken, or whatever you want to say, my life has just been a lot easier. It's not that I don't still get into arguments or get annoyed by things or anything like that, but it just passes very, very quickly now compared to what it would have been previously. I suppose that's one of the big differences.
Yeah, they found that. I read a test, some research recently, where they put the big brain scan, cognitive reinforcement, on these monks, and saw that they do experience, Tibetan monks, but they do experience the same emotions to the same degree, but their ability to not dwell on those emotions, the ability to get over those emotions, to allow them to subside more quickly, is increased with those who are experts or well practiced in the way of meditation.
That's exactly right. Yeah, because one of the Buddha's main teachings was that the impermanent nature of all things. And if you do that style of meditation, which I've also experienced on Vipassana retreat and some other things like that, you do get to see that, because somebody can tell you, okay, not everything's impermanent, everything passes. You are the sky and your thoughts are the clouds. It's all easy to say it, but stick somebody in a meditation retreat and have them meditate 10 hours a day in a room in an uncomfortable position, then you really see it. Because 1 minute you're panicking about something, the next minute you're stressing about something else, and the next minute you realize, oh, hang on, that other thing didn't turn out to be a problem. And then these are the small insights you have at the beginning, and those small insights turn into big insights and bigger insights and bigger insights, and over time you rewire your brain so that you'll still get triggered by things, because evolution has put that in there for a good reason, but you're much better at, once you realizing the threat is not a real threat, letting it go is so easy. So and it just becomes a part of who you are, rather than having to access a part of you, having to actually say, oh, I'm going to let this go. It just goes. That's the difference. That's
the thing you were saying about evolution as well. To touch on that, this fight or flight response that we have is nowadays quite a big problem, because there's no predator. There's nothing out there trying to kill us. There's nothing hiding in the bushes about to eat us. Yet we do have these, I guess it's turned into anxiety nowadays. We have these anxieties as to that there is something constantly wrong, and we have to be really uptight about it. We have to worry about it all the time, or else it's going to happen, which could be a bit of a shame. And I think meditation helps a lot with that, just appeasing the mind and, in a way, kind of telling yourself or realizing that everything is okay. But you're right, again, you can't go up to someone and say, we are all one, everything is fine. Just don't focus too much on your thoughts and it's going to be okay, because it's superficial on face value. It's something that takes practice. You have to do it every day, and you have to really try to realize these things and find this mindset. So you were saying earlier about the spirituality in terms of meditation that you were studying. Would you say that in your teaching now, spirituality has completely become separate from your teachings, or do you still incorporate some sense of spirituality when you teach meditation?
Yeah, I do. It's a real mix. So it really matters to me, like what's scientifically true and what we do know for sure, and what I can say for you as a promise, this will happen. For example, like you're saying about the nervous system, I can tell you, at this particular point in your meditation, this will happen and it will lead to this. I love being able to do all that side of it. And then I also bring into it the spiritual side, which is by saying, okay, this technique is from this tradition. It came from this place. This is how it arose. And in this tradition, this is how they see the world. Now, the Vedic knowledge base is extremely complex, but I break it down because really what I'm teaching mainly is a beginner's course in this style of meditation. So I'll give you the basics of what their belief system is, and also try and look at where that ancient belief system overlaps with what we know today to be scientifically true or to do with evolution. So to give you an example, one of the things that people who do this style of meditation using a mantra in the way I teach it might experience can be a kind of dissolution of the self. And that would be, you're meditating and you start going into this deeper and deeper and deeper states. You start to lose the sort of awareness of the body. So it's different from mindfulness, because mindfulness, you'd be aware of everything going on if you're really good at it. This is where you're just completely losing everything, losing yourself, losing your thoughts, losing where you are, what's going on, kind of dissolving into the universe kind of thing. Now, the ancient yogic belief was that, we are all one with everything, and we're all part of one consciousness tuning in, our brain is tuning into it and that kind of thing. And I think doing these styles of meditation is where these ideas came from. And it's funny because we can look at a brain now and say, this part of the brain is the bit that actually makes us feel like a separate self. So in this style of meditation, we can have an experience where we lose that, we bypass that part of the brain, and we feel connected to everything. And thousands of years ago, this is what these yogis from the Himalayas were saying in all of their holy books, that we are all one. They were bypassing the part of the brain that evolution gave to us to make us feel like a separate self, because that's useful for going around in the world. You're not going to step in front of a bus if you feel like a separate self who has to be protected. Funny actually that I use that analogy, because a famous Zen monk once was asked, how much ego do we need? And he said, just enough so that you don't step under a bus.
Yeah.
So
it's
there
true.
you go.
It's true.
Talking about anxiety and that kind of thing, you need to tread a little bit carefully with meditation also, especially if you're dealing with people with trauma and that kind of thing. Because intense meditation can make things better. People have this belief that meditation is a relaxation exercise, and it can be in small doses or in certain techniques. And the technique I teach is pretty safe. Sorry, my Alexa's going off in the background telling my girlfriend she's beautiful.
Sorry.
It says, reminder for Magdalena from Dewey, you are beautiful. Sorry, anyway. It's thrown me a little bit. So yeah, if you are someone with mental health problems, booking yourself on a Vipassana course for 10 days won't necessarily solve that. In fact, it may make everything a million times worse, because when you have a clean out of all of your It purifies you to some degree. It cleans out a lot of your stress, these practices, but the cleaning out process can be very traumatic. And if you're
Yeah.
somebody who's already on the edge, it can make it a lot worse. And also, generally speaking, if you get really into the mindfulness and practice it in a very intense way, you are completely rewiring your operating system of the mind. So again, doing that while you're conscious can make you feel very strange, because you can have feelings where you're just don't feel yourself. And if you're already somebody who's dealing with depersonalization or extreme anxiety, that can put you into a difficult place. So this is where having a teacher who really knows what they're doing is super important if you're going to take it to the extremes. 10 minutes a day on Headspace, don't worry about it, you'll be fine. But if you go much further, then having somebody who you can call and say, okay, I'm having these experiences, and with them either experience it themselves, or if they've been trained to be able to come back to you, that's very helpful.
Yeah, well, that's likely why Buddhism is always structured in that way. You've always got the tutor, and then the student, and the student practices, becomes the master, becomes the tutor, and so on. There's always this kind of linear structure to it, where you're always learning from somebody. You're never given, for a long amount of time, just go off and do your own thing, be zen, be mindful, and you'll be okay. I do kind of have maybe a bit of an airy-fairy view on meditation. Up until now, what you're saying is quite interesting, but to me, I've always thought that meditation's fine, especially just mindfulness and simple meditation, and you can't necessarily do it wrong. But I think what you're saying is when you get more into the deeper realms of meditation, especially transcendental meditation, that it can be problematic, especially if you're dealing with mental health issues.
It can also be extremely beneficial as well. So it's a bit like, put it this way, it's a bit like exercise. Exercise can be a walk around the block, and that's useful for my granddad. Or it can be going to CrossFit 7 days a week and chugging protein shakes and all the rest of it. So it's how extreme do you want to take it? So everybody will have to find a balance which is just right for them. So generally, the people that I teach, I'm teaching them to do 20 minutes, half an hour, twice a day. Now that's enough so that you don't dissolve into the universe and completely lose your mind if you're a beginner. It's not too much so that you're going to have that experience, but it's also enough to make a really big impact in your life, so that you will genuinely feel different, and you will have all of you. I can't prescribe everything that will happen to a particular person, because everyone has their own experience, but generally speaking, I can say this should help you feel better, less anxious, more easygoing. And although I also know that based on the 20 minutes twice a day, that's a lot of studies have come out which will that are talked about protecting your chromosomes, which will make you a bit more disease proof and make you live longer and improve your health from that perspective. So I really think if you're going to get into meditation, 20 minutes twice a day, that seems to be a minimal effective dose for really profound change. And if you want to take it further, then great. But even if you just do that, that can be big for a lot of people.
Yeah. I want to touch on modern day situations, or current present situations. Things like coronavirus. There's been an increase in mental health issues, I think, with the lockdown and with people having to kind of sit by themselves and be within their own minds and not have these, especially people who have been laid off and furloughed, not have these distractions by being able to go to work and having their usual regime. Have you noticed with your clients if there's been an increase in anxieties and depressions because of this current situation?
Not only that, people who have had the virus and been very unwell as a result, I've also taught them as part of their recovery. So I do think there's a huge problem with the mental health, and also some people who have it will be dealing with physical health problems, and then some people, especially older, like my granddad, who are trapped inside. Those people, those people can really benefit from practices that will help them. So for some people, that's meditation. For others, maybe not. So funnily enough, I thought about teaching my granddad, and I had a conversation with him about it. And I came to the conclusion at the end of it, he's so religious and he likes going to church. We just decided that he's going to pray more. I don't think I needed to tell him I don't think I need to teach him necessarily a technique, because I think he's sort of got something that works a little bit like that, and maybe down the line I will. But then for other people, I've taught them the specific technique, what I call deep meditation, and they've told me it's been an absolute lifesaver, because the stress of being in the house, the kids, the problems with work, the virus, the constant news, and the Brexit, the whole thing at the moment is crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm definitely noticing people reaching out to me more, and also feeding back that the meditation is helping them deal with the current stress of how crazy this year is turning out to be.
It is. I mean, it's unprecedented. Well, you can say we've known anything like it, but our parents and our grandparents haven't really known anything like this either. It's crazy.
That's true, yeah. But if you were to widen the span out for, say, like 500 years, there's been like way bigger things. So yeah, I guess
Yeah,
it just
absolutely.
seems so crazy to us, you know.
Yeah, we are in a bit of a nanny state where I think for the last couple of decades, most things have been pretty much fine. So this has been a bit of a shock to the system to most people. But I like what you were mentioning about your father. Was it your father or grandfather?
My grandfather, yeah.
Your grandfather, because it reminded me that there are more ways to access that mindfulness state that aren't just Zen Buddhism or Taoism or one of the Eastern religions. You can find it in Catholicism, you can find it in Christianity, whether it's prayer, whether it's singing hymns, you can find it in Hinduism. And I think that's quite nice that most religions touch on mindfulness and meditation in a certain way and in their practices.
Yeah, I think all of the ancient spiritual traditions, all of the ancient religions, their techniques, their early spiritual techniques, were about losing your sense of self and having a sense of like oneness.
Mm.
The Eastern traditions got it down to a fine art and a science, and they really threw themselves into it.
Yeah.
And they've managed to preserve it quite a lot, which is lucky for us, because now it's been brought over to the West and we've all got to kind of experience it. But those early Christian traditions, and I found this when I was researching, they had their own versions of this back in the day as well, but they were lost over time. I actually found out when I was reading something that Christian monks, Catholic monks maybe, they used to have a very strong meditation tradition, similar to what they have in the East. And it was the Vatican who shut it down, because they didn't like the idea that the monks had the direct line to God, and it was only supposed to be the big man who had it. So a lot of politics came into play and wiped out a lot of that tradition that was even happening in Europe at some point. I'm no expert in this side of it, so it's just a random fact that I once found out and quite liked.
That's crazy.
But yeah. So there's not really, the way I teach it, I just make sure I'm very, very clear on the fact that it doesn't matter whether you believe in anything or you don't need to believe in anything. And I'm not selling you any particular spiritual ideas or anything. Like, you can accept or reject any of that side of it, and the meditation will still work absolutely perfectly, because that was my experience.
Yeah. Well, you said at the beginning that you started off mostly kind of atheist, or from an atheist mindset. You didn't believe in much. And since then, getting into meditation, especially teaching meditation, and how your career with meditation has grown, would you say that you're still of an atheist mindset, or that maybe you've started to gain more of a spiritual understanding?
Well, I see that the science and the spirituality can coexist. Now I can see it, whereas I just couldn't see it before. I just thought, oh, if you believe in God, then you're stupid, because you think there's a big man in the sky with a beard who's making decisions. Okay, like, and I oversimplified that in my mind for many, many years. But now, once I looked at Eastern spirituality and the ancient religions, and then I looked at the science, which I can't say I'm a scientist, I don't understand it that well, but I certainly can see where they overlap. And if you look at, for example, there's a conference that goes on every year called SAND, Science and Non-Duality, where scientists and philosophers and even celebrities like Deepak Chopra come together, and they all kind of look at the science of consciousness and what we do when we don't know about it. Because consciousness is a mystery, we can't say where it arise. We can't point to a part of the brain and say, oh, it comes from this part or anything like that. All we can say is it's there. So they, in this particular conference, they look at these things and talk about it. And this is where you will see over and over again, the science and the spirituality completely overlap. And then if you go and dig deep into some of the quotes by the early scientists who were into quantum mechanics, some of the stuff they were saying sounds almost exactly like what the ancient yogis were saying. You could take quotes from ancient yogis and quotes from these early scientists in quantum mechanics, and you could play like a game, like yogi or scientist almost. You know, for example, Schrodinger, you know, the guy from the famous Schrodinger's cat thing. Most people know him as that, but he's actually one of the most famous, most genius scientists who ever lived, and he really did understand reality on a deeper level than most people. He famously said something like along the lines of, the number of minds in the universe is one. Our individual consciousness is phasing in and out of one singularity, or something like that. Is exactly what the Vedas and the Upanishads, the ancient spiritual texts in the Vedic tradition, where this meditation that I teach has come from, it's exactly the same thing. Tesla said similar things, Einstein said similar things. So when I uncovered this, I suddenly realized, oh, hang on, it's not like the spirituality. I don't even have to have faith, really. All I'm doing is looking at where these two things overlap and saying, oh, yeah, isn't that interesting? Reality does seem to look a certain way.
That's interesting. It seems like they're kind of reaching the same point then. If they're starting from a scientific mindset and therefore are biased towards thinking in a scientific way, whether it's quantum mechanics or anything else, biology. And if you're starting from a spiritual or religious mindset, you're biased in that way. But it sounds like, as you're saying, you can tell that you can barely tell the difference between a yogi's quote and a scientist's quote. It sounds like as the intelligence and the wisdom is increasing, they're coming towards the same outcome, or they're coming towards the same understanding, which is crazy.
It's nuts, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is like one of the big discoveries of my life, actually, because what I realized was these yogis in the Himalayas, but also in various spiritual traditions all across the East, and this is going back at least 5,000 years now. What it was there were some really highly intelligent, pretty driven people who were very, very curious about their origins, who they are, the nature of the universe, how things came to be. But they had no scientific method. Science didn't exist, no tools of any kind. So the way to look into it was to look inwardly to yourself and explore your own consciousness. And if you see yourself as a model of the universe, but in miniature, you can have insights about yourself, which actually extend out to the wider reality, which is, funnily enough, why insight meditation, what most people call mindfulness meditation, the real name is insight meditation. That's pretty much how it works. You sit quietly, you meditate, you have these small insights, and the insights get bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually your insights extend beyond your own nature out into the reality of beyond the self, so to speak. So yeah, I mean, it's a big topic.
It is.
But so yeah, put it this way. Sorry, what I was going to say was, if you were somebody like Einstein or Stephen Hawking or Tesla or someone like that, but you lived 5,000 years ago, but you were that level of intelligence and you had no scientific method, and then you went away and did this kind of work, think of the kind of ideas and conclusions that somebody of that level would come to. That's what I think these yogis probably were. They were just people like that who just wanted to know what's true. So over a long period of time, many hundreds, thousands of years, certain information was passed down from teacher to student. Some of it was proven false and thrown out, and some of it was held to be true. Enough people experienced it. And these yogis, don't forget, were parts, these communities would all meet up and talk about these things and record them and pass them on. So to some degree, it's not scientific the way we think of it now, where we do a blind testing, gold standard, all that stuff. But they just talked enough to build up a big knowledge base of information, and then they would keep some of it, leave some of it out. And what we're seeing today is what remains of that information. But we've also, because we in the West, we've commercialized it and we've taken bits out we don't like. For example, gods, no, we put those over there. Chakras, nice colors. Okay, we'll keep those who like those.
Yeah.
So we got this kind of a fast food version of it a little bit.
Yeah.
It's some places, but you can still go and learn the old stuff if you want to.
Well, that's the way things are nowadays. And I think that's one of the biggest difficulties towards getting into mindfulness and meditation, is that everybody wants it to be condensed. They want everything to be bite-sized. Attention spans are becoming minute. And I think meditation in a large way is about being able to focus your attention, being able to have patience, to spend your day slowly and mindfully and calmly, rather than getting as much of everything as you can at once. I think that's one of the biggest problems when it comes to calming our minds, and therefore negative thought processes come from that, and we have to deal with the anxieties and negativities that come from not being able to slow ourselves down and just calm ourselves. If you were to have, say, if you were to join the same narrative and come up with a condensed piece of information, something, a little bite-sized nugget of wisdom for anybody that was getting into meditation, getting into mindfulness, but was still of the mindset where it had to be quick and it had to be concise, or they wouldn't be bothered or wouldn't be interested by it. What would you say? What would you recommend that they do in order to get into it?
Well, funnily enough, I do say to people, like, for people who think they can't meditate, they should do my course, which I know is I'm biased, and I would say that. But the reason is that it's going the other way from mindfulness. So I love mindfulness and I do a lot of that myself. But the reason I had such a big breakthrough with this Vedic style of meditation is because it's not training yourself. It's not work. It's not focus. It's letting go. It's effortless. It's surrender. Now, it would be impossible if I said to you now, okay, just close your eyes, breathe, and do nothing. Don't have a thought. Don't just lose yourself. Just lose yourself. You wouldn't be able to do it. So that's why you have to learn a technique and learn and be given a mantra and learn how to use that mantra. But ultimately, the meditation style isn't about the mantra. It isn't about doing it perfectly. Ultimately, I give you the technique and I give you the mantra, and the rest of the course is me trying to get you to use those things in such a way that you lose them completely and lose your sense of self and lose everything. And you have this short dip into kind of the abyss, the absolute nothingness, what the Hindu monk who brought this style of meditation to the West called pure consciousness. You have this dip into that, and you return feeling very, very refreshed, very, very calm, very clear in your mind. The physical effects of doing this are really brilliant. I mean, even within just a few minutes, your jaw will unclench, your shoulders will relax, your breathing will become shallow, your body temperature will cool. And this is why we say this style of meditation can be between 2 and 5 times deeper than sleep. Now, they work that out based on the metabolic rate, which is your amount of oxygen you consume. And the reason for that is because when you sleep, nature has built into us this kind of program that says, okay, there may be predators around. We've not evolved out of that yet. So you can sleep and you can rest the mind, but we're going to keep the body active. So the breathing is actually quite full. And that's why people snore or can wake up with a shock sometimes, because nature is telling us, okay, there may be predators around, be alert, be ready. So the body doesn't actually completely rest in sleep. Whereas when you do this kind of meditation, you're holding yourself in that place in between awake and in between asleep. And it's that transitional period. Normally, we spend 30 seconds to a couple of minutes in that place when we're either going from waking to sleeping or sleeping to waking. You just have a very quick transition. You hold yourself in that place for 20 minutes. You can rest the mind and the body very, very deeply at the same time, because you're alert enough to let the body know, okay, doesn't matter if there's predators around, you're free to relax.
Yeah.
But the mind is also relaxing anyway, just because the mind can relax when it's not asleep. So this is scientifically why it's a very powerful practice, even if you only do it in short bursts, like 20 minutes here and there.
Yeah. That's something I've suffered with often. When you were saying earlier about insomnia, and obviously I'm relying on alcohol as well to get to sleep, just having those few beers, but then you find out that obviously it sets you into, you don't truly get the right amount of sleep or the right quality of sleep with alcohol. You don't, it knocks you out, but you don't enter that nice cycle of RPM sleep, and the chances of waking up during the night are a lot higher. And meditation has helped me with that as well, with being able to fall asleep a lot more easily and calmly. And I was listening to one of the co-founders of Headspace talk about sleep meditation, and he was a monk for I think 5 or 6 years, something like that. And in the monastery, they would only sleep for 4 hours a night, 4 hours of the 24-hour cycle. And the idea was to practice awareness whilst sleeping. You're aware of your sleeping, and I guess in a sense lucid dreaming as you were going through that. And that just boggles my mind. I couldn't even imagine being aware of being asleep. That's crazy.
Well, yeah, those guys really do take it to the extreme. So if you do, I don't know what kind of meditation he did or what order that guy was a part of, but I've read about what those people can put themselves through if they go and they make it their whole reason for being is to do so much meditation that you completely rewire your brain. Now, I don't know if I'm going to explain this very well, but I'm going to try. The way it works, generally speaking, for a normal person going around your day is that you kind of take in information through your various senses, and it creates a kind of virtual world in your brain that's kind of hallucinated, that we inhabit a kind of hallucination of a world. So if I touch the table, technically my finger touches it a nanosecond before I actually feel it, because I'm really in this sort of in my mind virtual world. If you get really into mindfulness and you just do it all day every day and you take it to an extreme, you can rewire your brain to the point where you no longer have this buffering system. You just experience everything as it is perfectly, with no like filter lens of perception or anything like that. And when you get to that level, that's really enlightenment. That's what the enlightenment from the Buddhist perspective is talking about. And I don't have time to like fully flesh out what I'm fully saying here, but the kind of experience that those people have when they've taken it to that extreme is so different from what you and I, or a normal person, or even somebody who meditates. You know, I've done thousands of hours of meditation, but I haven't flipped that switch, which will completely transform my experience of moment to moment reality in the same way that they have. And it's funny because when those people have that, in the Buddhist world, you're known as an arhat. It's like a very high level of achievement if you have it. It's kind of a level of enlightenment. When you have that, they say it happens like a switch. So anybody who's gone that far can say, okay, June the 3rd, and this, I was meditating, and then something went, and then suddenly that was it. Everything was transformed. Everything was transformed. Yeah. You'd have a lot of craziness going up to that point, explosions of consciousness and dark night of the soul. And you'd go through so many different cycles as your brain is, the operating system is being upgraded. But at some point you'd have a click and there'd be no going back. Your experience of life is transformed.
Instantaneously. That's crazy.
But you'd have to have, it's extreme amounts of meditation to get there. Teaching doesn't really do that. Same thing, it changes your life, but in a very different way.
Yeah. Some Zen teachers that I've heard of, they would sit in front of their students, and as they were giving kind of like Zen koans, just little anecdotes that would hopefully open the mind and have it their enlightenment all at once, would clap, or there'd be a gong while the students were meditating, or they'd make some sudden burst of sound in the hope that they would just wake up and become enlightened all at once in that instant. It sounds like what you're talking about there. And that's crazy, all at once, because it seems like it should take practice. It should be a procedural thing rather than just instantaneous.
Yeah, well, it's funny. The direct route to enlightenment, it became quite popular with Westerners because, as you can imagine, we like it now. We like it at McDonald's sort of speed. So some people really have latched onto that, and they think, okay, there are ways to get to enlightenment which don't require me sitting in an uncomfortable position or twisted up like a pretzel for hours on end. I'll just go that way. But from my understanding of it, from people I've spoken who are pretty highly realized and who are much further down that side of the path than I am, because I'm more the yogic side, and this is the Buddhist side we're talking about now. They'd say that you can have glimpses of non-dual realization, which would be the term for the thing we're talking about, but you can't stabilize it unless you have very, very strong mindfulness. So if you want to hold on to it, for most people, you would need to hold on to that kind of level of attainment. You would need to have strong mindfulness. Having said that, there are many, many stories of people who weren't even meditators, who were nothing, who had experiences which people thought were psychotic episodes or breakdowns, and in fact they were just spiritual experiences that they didn't know were coming and didn't work for. Yeah. If anybody's interested in that, I'll give you a great recommendation. There's a book by Jack Cornfield called After Ecstasy, the Laundry, which is like after enlightenment, what happens to your life next? After that. Yeah. Nice. And he interviews lots of people who've had these experiences, some normal people, some monks, nuns, some, anybody get capitate, but some people who were just not even meaning for it to happen. For some reason, there were triggers in the brain that can be switched. We call it spiritual because we don't understand it, but yeah. I'm sure there are perfectly logical explanations for these things.
That's crazy. Well, I hope it happens one day to me. I'm just doing the washing up, something just clicks, and that's me. I'm in robes for the rest of my life.
Well, yeah. Oh, you won't need to, because you've bypassed that whole bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you for being on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No worries. It's been fun.
Yeah, thank you for educating me. This is one of the main reasons I wanted to start this podcast, because I practice mindfulness and meditation. I know that it feels nice, but when it comes to my information base around these things, I don't really know all that much. And one of the best ways that I learn, and I think others learn as well, is by listening to a conversation, just paying attention to a conversation between two people discussing these things. And yeah, thanks again. It's been a pleasure. And I hope to talk to you again soon in the future. Thank you for being on.
No worries. Cheers for that. Take it easy.
For more, check out our YouTube channel or find us on Instagram at Worry Studios.